Business Morning. Reliable and accurate statistics is said to be a very vital tool when it comes to national development. For instance, take the gross domestic product and its all the other components related to it. Well, this can tell just how well the economy is responding to government policies. Other economic indicators also that have statistics put out can also give a government or help government in terms of general and national planning. Well, talking to me from our Abuja studios is the Statistician General of the Federation, Dr. Yemi Kale, who's going to be answering some questions, looking at how data is collected in the country. Good morning, Dr. Kale. It's so good for you to have you on the program.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here.
Now, we've had, over the years, of course, we've had all kinds of numbers thrown around. But let's take the issue of population, for example. About 3 years or 4 years ago, we were told that Nigeria had a population of about 150. And then 2-3 years down the line, we're told that, it's 167. And sometimes when you ask that question, how many are we in Nigeria? Well, people say, well, it depends on who you're asking, or it depends on who is giving you that data. So just run us through what the National Bureau of Statistics does in terms of data gathering and how it arrives at these numbers.
Well, first, let me just emphasize that population numbers are not generated by the National Bureau of Statistics. In fact, that's the only data in the country that is not generated by the National Bureau of Statistics. That is generated by the National Population Commission. That being said, the National Bureau of Statistics is officially the coordinator of the entire statistical system, so we're expected to work with the National Population Commission. But like I said, we do not generate those figures. As you have emphasized, statistics is extremely important as far as planning is concerned for evidence-based policy. Obviously, before you can solve any problem, before you can design any policy, you have to know actually what the problem is. And based on your assessment of the problem, which is the numbers, you now develop your programs and your policies to ensure that they are geared towards tackling the problem. And if you get the numbers wrong, obviously the policy prescriptions that you introduce would also be wrong. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding in terms of the way numbers are generated. There's a difference between a sample survey and there's a difference between a census. And whereas you can gather numbers correctly, depending on who the user of that data is, and different users have different reasons why they want to interpret data. They can interpret the data in different ways, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the data is incorrect. It just means that depending on what your objectives are, you can interpret the data to suit whatever purposes that you have. And that people have to be very, very careful how they use numbers to interpret what is actually going on.
Okay, now, since you became Statistician General, let me ask you this. What was the NBS like when you got there, and now that I know you've made some changes, we've seen some recent data, and some of them, most of them have been timely. What does the NBS look like now?
Well, what I would say is that I have never suggested that the NBS is there yet. We have a lot of work to do. All I've emphasized that I believe in the last year or so, NBS has made tremendous progress. One of the major things I focused on when I came in was to resolve three things. One is a thorough methodology review, look at how data is collected, the methodology used, the standard used, some of which had not been done for a while. And that's where you hear things like the rebasing of GDP, which has a base year of 1990, which has not been done for almost over 20 years. The second was to improve the dissemination of data. So even when the National Bureau of Statistics in the past had completed data, it was not made available to the public, and the whole objective of data is for it to be used. So if data is not available, if it's not timely, if it's not reliable, it becomes nothing more than numbers. So we have improved significantly our access, users' access to the data, in terms of a data portal, in terms of engaging the public policymakers a lot more effectively. Now we're concentrating on data quality, to ensure the quality of the data is as accurate as it is, so that we ensure that the information that we are giving to policymakers, to users of data, is credible, reliable, and it can inform evidence-based policy. These are the three things that we have introduced into the system that is making it a bit more efficient than it used to be. But like I said, NBS has come a long way. A lot of things have been done, a lot of improvements have been made. A lot of people still look at the current National Bureau of Statistics and compare it to the old Federal Office of Statistics, but we're becoming a lot more efficient. Even in our data gathering exercises, we are gradually moving from an era where we use just paper questionnaires. We're using a lot more electronic data capture instruments, so that it's faster, it's more efficient, it cuts out the possibility of errors. But again, I have to also state and stress that in every instance, there's always a statistical error. And the objective is to minimize that statistical error within 1 or 2, plus minus 2%. This happens in every statistical computation. You will never get the data 100% correct. You just minimize the errors within a particular band. And again, I have to emphasize that statistics is controversial, not just in Nigeria, in every country. I remember when the US released its employment data, it creates a bit of controversy. Are these numbers correct? Are these numbers wrong? Every country in the world, you would always have people that choose not to believe the data, that will criticize it, and that's actually quite useful as far as statistical development in Nigeria is concerned. So it's a development that we actually welcome.